Okay, so I managed to get the first video out there and managed also to get a few hits and some minor feedback via other channels. So what now? My first thought was a repeat of what I did before, another recipe. And I do have one that I plan to try a little later on. However, it occurred to me that a bit of context might also be helpful and a good way to start building more of a base, both as a content provider and for myself as well. I am all about context. In any evaluation, in any situation, context always seems to be a big part of why what happened happened or what didn't did not. Context can even go so far as to define acceptable morality. So, I'm going to provide you, the viewer, some context. To begin with, I think it is important to know a little bit about the culture I come from. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. Yes, those guys. And yes, I was even one of those at one point. Now, why is this important? Well, among other things, this church I belong to emphasizes the idea of self-sufficiency and preparedness. This is why in the past, the ideals of the Boy Scouts, yes, those guys, and yes, I was even one of those at one point, and the church dovetailed together so completely that the church at one time was perhaps the most dominant force in Boy Scouting, going so far as to use the scouting program as the basis for their male youth program in the United States, something my sisters often resented. So, even though I am not from Utah, I actually hail from a much greener and more heavily forested part of the country, I grew up with these principles in mind. I also grew up in a household that practiced them, sort of. We had a measure of food storage, canned peaches and large buckets of wheat from who knows where, yet this food was not regularly rotated and didn't seem to be a part of a plan of any sort. Nor did we ever seem to process or use any of the wheat we had on hand. I actually believe I am not alone in this observation, as I have heard many stories and jokes from people who are children in similar households about the need to transport the ever ubiquitous bags or buckets of wheat from one home to another. Peculiar people indeed. Over our years together, my wife and I did try and make good on this guidance from the leadership of the church to store food. Yet I believe we often ran into the same problems that my parents, and probably so many others before and since, have struggled with. How to do it properly and rotate it as needed effectively. So over the years, our storage was minimal and did not follow any master plan that I was aware of. It could have. I may just not have seen it. Yet it was what it was. When we moved to Utah in 2014, all that changed. Utah is unlike any other place I've ever lived. And I've lived in some interesting places. I know of no other place where Walmart has a section for emergency supplies, where one can buy these blue 55-gallon water barrels, where the local groceries have what they call case lot sales, not just once, but a couple of times or more a year, and where Costco sells wheat and oats in large buckets from the local Lehigh roller mills. I blame the church. After all, a majority of the local population is still part of that fold, and that creates a market for such things. A market I bought into and, like so many others, have purchased a significant amount of basic supplies from. The problem with basic supplies, of course, is that they are, well, basic. They don't really mesh with the prevalent American lifestyle. I mean, who actually cooks their own bread anymore when Walmart and Smith's have bread for around $1 a loaf? What does one do with hard white wheat and other such unfamiliar supplies anyway? More importantly, what good is having something like hard white wheat if you don't really know what to do with it in the first place? So here I am, a member of a community that encourages its members to be prepared and have at least a year's supply of food on hand for all members of their household. Yet the knowledge of just how to do that effectively isn't something that most Americans, including I suspect a lot of them, and definitely I, have in ready supply. What I suspect is that the majority end up in much the same situation I saw my parents and others in, myself included, over the years. And that is a situation I no longer want to be in myself. So, what should I do about it? I want to change these circumstances, so how do I go about it? I think it begins with exploring what resources are available to me, what I can acquire, and more importantly, what I can actually do with those resources once I have them. In essence, learn or develop ways that I can use the things I can store long term in my daily life with minimal impact on my ability to live a comfortable life. Part of this is to learn ways to make food storage and rotation sustainable in everyday living. As a side note, sustainability is a theme I do hope to explore more thoroughly as I develop this channel and persona. It is a concept that matters a lot to me for a number of reasons, both in terms of former employment and future objectives. One day, I hope to be able to be fully self-sustaining, making the sourcing of more luxury items, i.e. things I can't produce myself effectively, more of a choice than an obligation. Lofty goals, yet I believe they are achievable, and that, at its heart, is why I am trying the recipes I am. As always, thanks for watching.